NFL Week 8 spreads and totals best bets video is here. My name is Steve. We're going to cover every single game in the NFL in Week 8. We're going to have a spread and a total pick for every game. Let's lock in and have a great Week 8 in the NFL.
Well, my presence isn't real. It's another bad one like this is scale. It's straight fire. All my bets straight from. You're in the house that Cap made now. Straight fire.
As always, my friends, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. Always appreciate that. We are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. Appreciate all of your guys' support as always. Quick recap from week number 7 in the NFL. We ended up going 8-7 on spreads, bringing our record now to 56-52 for the season on spreads, and we went 7-8 on totals. We're a little bit behind there on totals, but I'm confident we could have a great Week 8, guys. Our spreads have been okay, have been solid. I still want to be better, though, obviously. We're hovering around 500 total for the season. So, obviously, there was definitely some good things that happened there in week number 7. A few misreads, but I think we can have a great Week 8 here in the NFL. Keep in mind, guys, NBA season has started. We have daily NBA videos out as well. We also will have our Thursday night football video out in the NFL on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and plenty of other content coming at you this week. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel and you got them noties turned on. All right, guys, let's get right into the games this week. We're going to start with the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Los Angeles Chargers from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Chargers 3-point favorites, total here set to 44.5. Some storylines here. Both these teams coming off of losses. Vikings lost at home to the Eagles, 28-22, in which Jalen Hurts and company torched that secondary. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown both had huge games. Eagles won that game there by 6 there versus the Vikings. And then the Chargers at home to the Colts pretty much got dominated start to finish. Lost that one there 38-24. Problems on the offensive line continue to be a big concern for the Chargers right now. The Vikings potentially getting Aaron Jones back this week for Thursday night football. That'll be a big addition there for them. So what happens here? Well, at this point in the season, to me, the Chargers kind of just remind you of the same thing every year. It just the protection just isn't there for Herbert. And once again, we saw it on display last week. The offense was so-so. The defense was horrible. When he started the season, he thought the Chargers defense was going to start locking in. Herbert was looking great. And then they got some injuries on the offensive line. And then their defense started playing horrible. Really, at this point, I got to take the Vikings here. I know the Vikings lost at home last week to the Eagles. But I just have more trust right now with Minnesota than I do with the Chargers. I'm pretty much almost at a fade every week point with the Chargers, especially if they're favored. Just because of we've faded them obviously the last couple weeks versus Miami and versus Indianapolis last week. Both they were favored. We faded them both times in cash as far as our pick goes. I think, once again, I think the Vikings here, I think the Vikings are better than what they've shown versus the Eagles. As far as defensively, I think they're a little bit better than that. Hurts obviously tore up that secondary. But I don't think Herbert's going to have enough time to tear up the secondary like he did, like he was doing early on in the season. Still think they'll be able to score somewhat, but I trust the Vikings a little bit more. Like I said, likely getting Aaron Jones back, which I think will be huge for this offense. He'll be a great, particularly on third down, helping out either Carson Wentz or if McCarthy's going to be back starting this week. I think that'll be a big help there. And I think the Vikings go on the road and they perform here. I'll take the plus points with the Vikings. So give me the Vikings plus the 3, and I will take the over 44.5 points. I don't particularly trust either defense. For the most part, I think I trust the Vikings defense a little bit more at this point. The Chargers have just been looking steadily worse, especially the last couple of weeks. They've been absolutely horrible. The Vikings played a really good Eagles team, obviously, there with the weapons that they have. I think the Vikings have a little bounce back in them here and on the defensive end. But like I said, I think we'll still see points. So I will take the Vikings plus the 3 and the over 44.5 points. Next game on tap, we have the Miami Dolphins traveling to Atlanta to take on the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons are 7-point favorites. Total set to 44.5. Darren Waller for the Dolphins, their newly acquired target from a couple weeks ago, has made a huge impact on this team. I believe he's caught either 4 or 5 touchdowns in his first 4 games. He is going to be out for this one with a pectoral strain. So I think that's actually big. Initially, I was actually leaning Dolphins to cover the number. But then with Waller out, I think that's a very significant injury. We've talked about this before with Miami early on in the season when we started fading them right out of the gate in week 1 where we took Indy. And Indy ended up winning, obviously, straight up. And now Indy has turned out to be an absolute powerhouse this season. The vibes. We talk about vibes in the NFL. The vibes in Miami are about as bad as they could be, right? Mike McDaniel and Tua both talking in the media, and they're not saying good things. They're not saying team-building things. Mike McDaniel said, I need Tua to not throw 10 picks. And Tua's definitely like, yeah, we got some weird things going on around here. Guys, not showing up not showing up for meetings. There's just a whole lot of sound bites this week from the Dolphins, which you just don't like to see that as far as vibes on a team. So I don't see the Fins coming out overly inspired here in a road game versus a Falcons team that is pretty solid. The Falcons got humbled last week in San Francisco. They were in the game, though. Ended up losing it late. I think there was some decision making there that they can improve upon. I was very, very tight about some of their decision making there in the fourth quarter, but it is what it is. But I do think Atlanta bounces back here at home. I think Bijan's going to have his way versus this Dolphins defense. So I am going to roll with the Falcons minus the 7. I think they'll cover the number here and really handle business versus the Fins. The Fins looked horrible last week on the road versus Cleveland. Like I said, coming off a tumultuous week. Waller's now injured. Just too much going on here. I'll take the Falcons. I'm going to rock the under 44.5 points. I don't think the Dolphins are going to score really much at all. If I had to tell you honestly, I don't think they'll score much at all. So unless Atlanta's going to score 38, I don't see the over hitting. I see maybe the Dolphins getting a touchdown, maybe 10 points at max. I don't see a lot happening here for Miami. So we'll take the under as well. We'll go Falcons minus 7 and the under 44.5 points. Next game on tap here, we got the Chicago Bears traveling to Baltimore, taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens 6.5 point favorites, total set to 50.5 points. Big storylines here is, do the Ravens get Lamar Jackson back this week? Well, he didn't practice on Monday. However, I still have lines up, fantasy lines up for him, which usually tells me the story about whether they're playing or not. So I think he does play. For what it's worth, he has to play. Okay, the Ravens are 1-5. They need a win, and they can't mess around here with the Bears at home. They have to take care of this business here with the Bears. And they're still very much in this division. This division's not very good here in the AFC North. The Ravens can certainly climb back into things here. And I think it starts here with the Bears. So they can't afford to sit Lamar Jackson another week. They just can't. They can't lose another game right now. They're 1-5. They cannot fall to 1-6. Their season will most likely then be over. There's only so much you can overcome at some point. So I do think Lamar plays. It's early on in the week. If you guys are looking at this video later in the week, maybe just check it out. Make sure he is actually playing. But I'm going to rock the Ravens minus the 6.5 here. I think as long as Lamar is playing, I think they cover the number against this Bears defense, which honestly has not been very good. Their defense, I think, is certainly beatable, especially for a guy like Lamar Jackson in this Ravens offense. I think the Bears will have a lot of problems. They've had a lot of trouble stopping the run. Obviously, the Ravens love to do that. So this is set up to be a Ravens route. However, the Ravens defense, until proven otherwise, has not done much this season. So I do think the over is going to hit. I do think they'll be a little better coming out of the bye week. I mean, it's very reasonable to think that John Harbaugh will have some adjustments. So I think the Ravens will be very good here out of the bye. They'll cover the 6.5, and I also think this over will hit. The Bears are still going to score some points, but I think the Ravens offense should have a field day versus this Bears defense. So give me the Ravens minus the 6.5 and the over 50.5 points here. Next game on tap, we got the Buffalo Bills traveling to Carolina to take on the Carolina Panthers. Panthers 7.5 point home dogs. Total set to 46.5. 1 o'clock start here. So Bills kind of in a very similar situation as the Ravens in some ways, although we know Josh Allen's going to be playing. Bills coming out of the bye week should be a bit healthier here. They're another team that racked up a lot of injuries on Monday Night Football versus the Falcons. They should get some players back here. They should get Kincaid back. They should be a little bit more healthy on defense as well. So once again, I think this is a spot where McDermott will make some adjustments with that defense. I think that he is supposed to be a defensive mastermind. So I think with a little bit more time to prepare, I think McDermott and the Bills will be a little bit more ready to play this game. And after they've lost the last couple, I think there'll be a little bit of desperation here from Buffalo as well. So I think Buffalo will perform very well out of the bye here. I think this is a great spot for them. I can't knock on the Panthers. I really can't. It looks like Bryce Young might be out for this one as well. So I might be looking at Andy Dalton for this game, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. To me, it doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, the Panthers have been surprising this year. 4-3. The running game has been phenomenal. Their defense was really good last week, albeit versus the Jets. I think every defense looks good versus the Jets offense at this point. But the last couple of games in Carolina have been very high-scoring games. Obviously versus Dallas, versus Miami. Both those offenses had success there versus the Panthers. So I think Josh Allen will have plenty of success here as well. Bills will make a lot of plays here in the pass game. And I think the Bills will cover the number. So I'm going to rock the Buffalo Bills minus the 7.5 in this particular spot. Like I said, coming out of the bye week, I do think they bounce back here. It's very reasonable to think that. And I also do like the over for this game. Like I said, the last few games in Carolina have been a lot of points. Carolina offense has actually been decent, particularly at home. They've been very good. So I think we'll see some points here. I do think the Bills will score a lot. And I think they'll be able to win here by a couple scores. So give me the Buffalo Bills minus the 7.5 and the over 46.5 points. Okay, next game on tap. We got the New York Jets traveling to Cincinnati to take on the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are 6.5-point favorites. Total set to 43.5. Quarterback controversy in New York. Will it be Tyrod Taylor? Will it be Justin Fields? I would say the pendulum might be leaning a little bit more towards Tyrod Taylor if I had to take a pick right now. It is very much up in the air, so either one could certainly play. But I have a feeling like we're going to see Tyrod Taylor on Sunday. In either case, this Jets offense has had a lot of problems. They're starting to deal with the injuries now with Garrett Wilson. And on the other side for Cincinnati, coming off a huge home win over the Steelers. Joe Flacco has looked pretty good in a Cincinnati uniform so far. Covering the last two spreads here for the Bengals up in Green Bay and obviously versus Pittsburgh there, which we took both of those. So the question is, does this continue? Do the Bengals continue to look good? I do think they continue to look good on offense for sure. It's hard to say much good about the defense. The defense hasn't been very good at all this season, really, in any aspect. Even in their win there over the Steelers, they still gave up 31 points. They've been a little bit better, though. They held Metcalf in check, which I was a little surprised by. They held him to 50 yards. They had some big breakdowns, though, on the back end with the tight ends. The tight ends had a field day versus the Bengals. So can they clean up some of that in the middle of the field? I think that remains to be seen. But if you're asking me to trust between these two teams, we're going to go Bengals. I have a little bit more trust here with Cincinnati. The vibes are certainly heading in the right direction here for Cincinnati. I think they saved their season there versus Pittsburgh. And this is another game they have to have. They're obviously not going to win every game on their schedule, but you got to beat the Jets at home. They got to start there. Got to get back to 500. If you're going to stay in this thing, you got to beat the Jets at home. So I do think they do that. I'll take the Bengals minus the 6.5. I think they take care of business here at home versus the Jets. And I do think the over will hit. I don't really particularly think either of these defenses is good. The Jets defense has been better the last couple weeks, but versus a very lethal passing attack in the Bengals, where you got T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, they're going to put up points, especially in Cincinnati. We've talked about Cincinnati being a breeding ground for points. I think you'll see some points here. So I will rock that over 43.5 points, and maybe the Jets put up a couple touchdowns here for Pete's sake. Maybe they don't look completely inept like they've looked the last couple weeks. little bit of a bounce back spot here for, I think, a little bit for the Jets offense. I mean, what have they scored? 17 points over the last 2 weeks. I think they get a little bit more than that. I think they get, maybe a couple touchdowns here. But Cincinnati, I think, is still going to end up routing them. Joe Flacco is going to do his thing. Give me Bengals minus the 6.5 and the over 43.5 points here. Next game on tap, we got the San Francisco 49ers traveling to Houston to take on the Houston Texans. Texans 1.5 point home dogs. Total set to 41.5. I think part of the reason for that, we got Nico Collins questionable for this game. Hopefully he is going to end up playing. He's got to get cleared, though, from concussion protocol. So we'll see what happens there with Nico. In either event, the Texans do have a very good defense. We know this. They have one of the better defenses in football. They're taking on a 49ers squad that's been dealing with injuries all season. Obviously, Fred Warner's out. Nick Bosa's out. But the 49ers have been very surprising this year. They still are getting it done with all these bodies out. The coaching has been next level right now in San Francisco with Robert Saleh coaching up that defense. And Kyle Shanahan just continuing to do his thing on the offensive side, obviously. So, got to hand it to the coaching staff. They're doing a lot with a little right now. In San Francisco, there's a lot of bodies missing, and it hasn't really mattered that much. The 49ers have done a very... If I had to say there was a Coach of the Year candidate, you got to mention Kyle Shanahan. You got to mention Robert Saleh. You got to talk about the job he's done with that defense and all the injuries. Same thing with Shanahan with the Mac Jones at quarterback. All of a sudden Mac Jones looks like Alabama Mac Jones again, which he hasn't looked that way obviously since Alabama. So got to give a lot of credit here to both these coaches, and I definitely think that's something worth noting. This game is at home, though, for the Texans. And I think that's what I'm focused on here. Texans aren't a bad ball club either. They're supposed to be pretty good. They've had a disappointing season thus far. They went up to Seattle. That was a tough game. I was pretty sure Seattle would cover and win that game, which they did. But you're coming back home. I think the Texans season's a little bit on the line here as well. CJ Stroud has some questions to answer. And I think it'll be a little bit better here for Houston. At the end of the day, I said this last week, and Atlanta's probably not an offense that we can trust consistently. So them going out on the road, I guess it wasn't too big of a surprise that Atlanta's offense struggled on the road. They haven't been particularly good on the road all season. So, but here, coming back home for the Texans versus a banged up 49ers defense, where Fred Warner's out, Nick Bosa's out. They have had troubles in the secondary. They've had breakdowns. Baker exposed them a couple weeks ago. I think the Texans get back on track and get a home win here. So I'll take the Texans plus the 1.5. Don't think it'll be particularly pretty, though. I think this is going to set up to be somewhat of an ugly game. I think Texans defense shows up, though, and plays well at home. I'll also take that under 41.5 points as well. So give me Texans plus the 1.5 and the under 41.5 points. Next game on tap, Cleveland Browns travel into Foxborough to take on the New England Patriots at Gillette Stadium. 1 p.m. start time, guys. Patriots favored by 7 points. Total set to 40.5. The question you have to ask yourself in a game like this is, are the Patriots good enough to cover negative spreads? Like, consistently. Like, are the Patriots that good? We know they've been good. They're on a great streak right now. They're 5-2. They're in first place in the AFC East. They're vying for that title this season, and they deserve a lot of credit. Mike Vrabel deserves a lot of credit. Drake May deserves a lot of credit. Stephon Diggs deserves a lot of credit. His defense deserves some credit. But are they that good to trust them to cover, to cover a full touchdown spread at home? No, they're not. Especially versus a good defense in Cleveland. Cleveland has one of the best defenses in the NFL. Right now, they also have one of the better running games going right now with Quinshon Judkins as well. I know Dylan Gabriel hasn't been stellar, but the offense looked much better last week versus Miami at home. So now he's got a couple starts under his belt. So I'm not saying the Patriots don't win this game, but I'm just saying covering a large negative spread is tough for any team. But the Patriots, I don't think, are quite there yet. I think we have to pump the brakes a touch. I know I took the Titans last week versus New England, and I look like an idiot. But I think here, And Titans started pretty good in that game, by the way. But I think here, with the running game that Cleveland's got, I'm much more confident in Cleveland's team than I am Tennessee's, for one. Cleveland has a pretty good ball. Cleveland actually has a decent ball club. They're actually not that bad. I know, the record wouldn't really tell you that right now, but they're not that bad of a club. They got a great defense, a great running game. That usually will win you a lot of games. So, with that being said, I think we'll see a close football game. I think Stefanski is a good coach. He can put his quarterback in good situations to not turn the ball over. That's really the key, I would say, to this game is just Dylan Gabriel not turning the football over. If they could do that, run the football with Judkins, play solid defense versus Drake May, I think I can hang around here and keep this game close. So I will take the Browns plus the 7. I'm going to take an ugly football game as well here. We'll take the under 40.5 points. I think this is set up to be a little bit of a field goal type of a game, an ugly type of a football game. Very much expect it with this Browns-Patriots game. And it's no knock on the Patriots, guys, but they don't deserve that much respect yet. They're getting there. But right now I'm going to take the Browns plus the 7 and the under 40.5 points. Next game on the slate, we got the New York Giants traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles 7-point favorites here. Total set to 43.5. Revenge spot here for Philadelphia, guys, after an embarrassing loss in New York a couple weeks ago on Thursday Night Football. So the question is will that revenge actually happen? Could make a good case here. The Eagles offense got on track last week. Their pass offense, which we've been wondering about all season, when are they going to get on track? Well, they fully got on track last week with both star wide receivers getting involved and then having huge games, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So they looked obviously very good there in Minnesota. Obviously I think there's reason to think that could continue. The Giants are coming off an absolute meltdown versus the Denver Broncos, in which they allowed 33 fourth quarter points to Bo Nix and the Broncos and a stunning 33-32 loss for the G-Men. So there's a lot of things going on here. Why I really like the Eagles in this one. Obviously, the Eagles offense got on track last week. It's a revenge spot, and the Giants can't be feeling too good about their season now. Falling to 2-5 after that loss, that was a season-altering loss in my mind. That was one that if you're going to make any run in the NFC East or in the NFC playoff picture, you had to have that one. Just because you had it. You had that game won. No doubt about it. I think there was a stat that popped up. It was a very crazy stat. But teams that were up by 3 scores with it was either 6 minutes or more left in the fourth, only one team since the Super Bowl merger had come back and beaten a team in that scenario, and that was the Colts. I actually remember that game back in 2003. Well, that was the first time since then that that's happened. So shows you how big of a loss that is and how much they had that game in the bag and they let it slip away. So I think that's to say that won't affect you going forward that should affect you. That's tough to overcome mentally, right? When you fold like a cheap tent like that and lose. They're up against the Eagles team, which top to bottom I think we know is more talented, right? At skill positions. They obviously have a lot more talent as of right now, and they have a lot more winning experience, obviously with Nick Sirianni, than winning the Super Bowl. So with the Eagles coming back home after a big win, got their offense on track versus a Giants team that's mentally got to be having a hard time right now. I'm going to take the Eagles minus the 7, and I will take that under 46 and, sorry. Yeah. I don't know why I said that. I will take the over 43.5 points. When these two teams got together, obviously a couple Thursdays ago, it was a very high-scoring game. I still think the Giants will be able to put up some points. I don't have a lot of trust in this Eagles defense yet, but I think the Eagles offense bounces back in a big way. That's really where you're going to see the bounce back here. So Eagles minus 7 and the over 43.5 points. Next game on tap, we got the Tampa Bay Bucs taking on the New Orleans Saints from New Orleans. Saints are 5.5-point dogs. Total set to 46.5. Bucs coming off a tough Monday night loss to the Lions, in which not only they lose the game, they also lost Mike Evans for a long time as he broke his collarbone. So that was a very significant injury there. I They did get Egbuka back as well, so Egbuka should be good. Tez Johnson has kind of emerged in the past game for the Bucs as a very solid wide receiver. They're going to need to rely on him now with the injuries. Kate Otten also stepped up there on Monday night. But the takeaways from Monday night, because I watched the game, I was happy in a lot of senses because I'm a diehard Lions fan. Lions played well. But Baker Mayfield was just off that game. He had multiple throws that he just missed that he typically doesn't miss. So I don't think we'll see that again. Obviously, this isn't a pressure situation taking on the Saints, kind of a lowly Saints club. So I think this is definitely a nice bounce back spot here for Baker and the Bucs offense in particular. And also I think for their defense too. Their defense didn't play great there on Monday night as Jahmyr Gibbs put up over 200 yards on him. So looking for that defense to show a little bit more pride than they did obviously on Monday night. But I very much have a lot of belief in this Bucs team with Baker Mayfield. Obviously, he's had an MVP-like season thus far. He's been fantastic for the most part this season. Regardless of who's been playing wide receiver for the Bucs, Mike Evans has been out most of the year anyway. So it's really not going to be anything new for this Bucs offense this week. So I think this is a nice bounce-back spot for the Bucs. The Saints, to me, have been kind of a scrappy team this year, no doubt about it. They've been competitive in some games, but they still find themselves, despite being scrappy a lot of the game, still losing by a couple of scores. So the Bucs are favored by less than a one full score here. So I think it's a nice bounce back spot here for the Bucs. I'll take the Bucs minus the 5.5, and I'm gonna take the under 46.5 points. I don't trust too much about the Saints offense to put up a lot of numbers here. I think the Bucs will put up enough to cover the number, but I think overall it'll be a lower scoring game. I think this total's set a little bit too high, so I do like the under as well. Like I said, guys, for the Saints, like I said, they still have found themselves losing games by a couple of scores despite being scrappy. So, like the Bucs minus the 5.5 and the under 46.5 points. Next game on tap, we got the Dallas Cowboys traveling to Mile High Stadium in Denver to take on the Denver Broncos. Broncos are 3-point favorites. Total set to 50.5. This is obviously one of our bigger totals of the week. So a lot of that is because of the Cowboys single-handedly. Their defense is horrible and their offense is electric, right? They have big-time weapons in George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, and Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams has had a great season. He's returning to Denver to take on the Broncos, so that'll be interesting to watch that. He should be running extra hard in this one. Broncos coming off a thrilling win over the New York Giants. I would say a season-altering win for them, because if they had lost that game, definitely would not have been good given the last 2 weeks of who they played, and they haven't really played well each of the last 2 weeks versus the Jets and the Giants. But I think they found something there in the fourth quarter versus the Giants. I think they found some momentum, right? Bo Nix put up 4 total touchdowns in the fourth quarter, really picked up his level of play. I think eventually this Denver offense is going to start getting it during the other 3 quarters. You got Sean Payton as your coach, a brilliant offensive mind. So I think they'll figure it out. They got enough weapons on offense with Dobbins and Harvey and Cortland Sutton, and I do think their offense is solid, so they shouldn't have too hard of a time here versus the Cowboys. The Cowboys' pass defense obviously has been abysmal this season. Their defense in general has been abysmal. So this is a nice spot for Bo Nix at home to finally get some things right and to find Cortland Sutton down the field and to make some big plays here in the pass game, which I do think is going to happen. I think the Broncos will have success. And obviously, just holistically, I trust the Broncos more. The Cowboys, like I said, have a terrible defense. So the Broncos should have a field day on them. But the Cowboys are still the Cowboys. That offense is going to score some points as well. No doubt about it. So it will be a higher scoring game. This is, despite the total being high, I think we'll see a lot of points here. But I think Denver's the play here at home. Just a field goal favorite versus a Cowboys team that I don't think is all that good. They played a decimated Commanders team last week, and they lost on the road versus the Panthers the week before. So they've been very inconsistent this season, to say the least. They've had some they haven't really had any marquee wins yet this year that I would say, wow, that was a great win. They beat the Commanders that were decimated. They beat the Jets and the Giants. It's nothing that great, and that was the Giants with Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson tore them apart. And if you've seen Russell Wilson the rest of the season, he's been awful. So, I think the Broncos will be able to do some things on offense, and their defense will be good enough here to cover the number and win the game. Give me Broncos -3 and the over 50.5 points here. Next game on tap, we got the Tennessee Titans traveling to Indianapolis to take on the Indianapolis Colts. Colts are 14-point favorites. The total's set to 46.5 here. Danny Dimes, Jonathan Taylor, and this Colts offense have been dominant this season. Like I said last week, the Colts, or rather Danny Dimes, was first in QBR coming into last week, so he's had a great season. He has been fantastic, and I've very much been a big fan of what's going on in Indianapolis. We've been backing the Colts quite a bit here at the channel. Both in these videos and our official bets videos as well. We took the Colts money line last week for plus value. That cashed easily. Colts were in control of that game throughout. And, a lot of people are still saying, well, the Colts haven't really played anyway. I don't care who they play. They've taken care of business just about every week. Their only loss, they really should have won that game too versus the Rams. They should be 7-0, and I think the loss is probably good for them to humble them and to say, hey, if we lose our focus, we could still lose. So I really love this team right now. I love the way it's constructed. Their offensive line's great. Their defense is solid. Jonathan Taylor is at MVP form right now. Danny Jones is at MVP form. You can put both of those guys in the MVP conversation right now, which is crazy. When you consider the trajectory of Danny Jones' career. I'm happy for him. I love what he's doing in Indy there. And I think that continues. Tennessee is not a good football team on either side of the ball. They fired their head coach midseason. Didn't perform well after that. I thought they would. I thought they'd have a little bit of a bounce back in them, and they really didn't versus New England. They started okay, and then they just fell apart there as New England ran away there with that one. So, I think here this is a bad Titans team. They're running into a juggernaut in the Colts on the road. There's no way I see the Titans hanging with the Colts here. There's just no way. Their defense has been awful. Cam Ward's getting a little better. I think maybe he could get a couple drives here on the Colts. He has been a little better. He was 25 of 34 throwing the football last week, so that's definitely an improvement for him. So I think the Titans might put up a little bit here, but it's not going to be enough to cover the number. I think the Colts are going to cover the -14. Give me the Colts minus the 14. And like I said, I think the Colts are going to score a big number here. There's going to be a crooked number on the board here for the Colts. I would say, 31 to 38 points here for the Colts for sure. I might give the Titans, up to 17. But I think when you factor that in all together, that should lead to Colts -14. I'll take them to cover. And the over 46.5 points. Like I said, the Colts are going to put up a huge number. It's just how many can the Titans score? I think the Titans could score, like I said, 10. I would say, 10 to 14 points for the Titans. It's not going to be a lot, though. And maybe the Colts even score more than that. Maybe the Colts get into the 40s. So, like the Colts minus the 14 and the over 46.5 points. Next game on tap, Green Bay Packers travel into Pittsburgh to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are 3-point dogs in this one. Total here is set to 44.5. So what happens here? In Pittsburgh, Packers on the road for the second straight week, which I think is significant. They didn't play particularly well in Arizona. They did not cover the number. They very easily could have lost that game. They were trailing late in the fourth quarter, ended up putting a drive together to win 27-23. Versus Jacoby Brissett and the Cardinals. So what happens here? It's back-to-back road games. Taking on a Steelers club that's in first place in the AFC North. They're coming off a loss versus the Bengals, 33-31. That defense definitely regressed last week on a short week. So the Steelers kind of sitting in a weird position now with in this division now, where now the Bengals are starting to make a comeback in the division. I think the Steelers. To me, I think the Steelers get back on track a little bit here at home. I like that we're getting plus money here on the Steelers, plus points rather. Aaron Rodgers has been Green Bay Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, Rodgers is going to have an extra extra bone to pick here with Green Bay. This is his former team. This should be an exciting game. Aaron Rodgers taking on his former team. I think he brings it. Versus a Packers defense over the last couple weeks that's been a tad vulnerable, right? Versus Cincinnati and Arizona, two pretty poor offenses, and those offenses have had success versus Green Bay. I think Rodgers gets back on track, and this offense does some good things. And, Love, I would say inconsistent, for a lot of last week until the fourth quarter. He picked it up, but the offense didn't look particularly great the last couple weeks either. Versus Cincinnati or Arizona, not dominant like they should have been in both of those games. So I'm going to roll with the home team here. The Steelers plus the 3. I think Rodgers will have a great game versus his former team. I think we'll see some points in this one. I like the over 44.5 points as well. I think this should be a lot of fun to watch. So give me the Steelers plus the 3 and the over 44.5 points. Next game on tap, we got the Washington Commanders traveling to Kansas City to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs 10.5 point favorites. Total set to 47.5. So what happens here? We took the Chiefs last week to cover a huge number versus the Raiders. I believe it was minus 12.5, and they covered that easily, obviously winning there 31-0. We also took the Chiefs team total over, which also cashed. So the question is staying at home. What do they do here versus the Commanders team that was projected to be pretty good this season? Obviously having a very much an up and down season. But now have suffered back-to-back losses to the Bears and to the Cowboys on the road. So here they might be getting a lot healthier. That remains to be seen midweek here. We got 3 guys questionable. Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, and Deebo Samuel. All listed as questionable for this game. I think they're likely going to get their receivers back at the very least. I think Terry McLaurin and Deebo are going to play. I think we got Terry McLaurin back at practice. Deebo should be playing too. After missing last week, you should see him play. The real question mark is Jaden Daniels. Is Jaden Daniels going to play? And that's really why the spread is set up where it is. Probably be closer to 7 or 6.5 if Jaden Daniels was playing. That's a big question mark right now. But they did say the injury suffered versus Dallas. The hamstring injury is not significant. So I tend to lean toward him playing, but let's just play it out. If he doesn't play, I still think Washington's going to cover if it's Mariota. Like I said, it's a big difference between all of your receivers being out and all of your receivers now being healthy. It's a huge difference in the Washington offense. You got Deebo and Terry McLaurin playing. That's enough for even a guy like Mariota to still put up enough points and be competitive here with the Chiefs. So, while the Chiefs did some great things last week versus the Raiders, which I expected, it could be a little bit of regression here. I don't think the Commanders are honestly as bad on defense as how they've played. Obviously, they did not play well last week versus Dallas. I do think they could be a little bit better here, though. I really do. I think the Commanders' defense could be a tad better here than what they've been. And even still, I think their offense will do enough to hang around here. The total was set to 47.5, pretty high total. We tend to see the Chiefs be more methodical in their approach anyway. With the guys that they have, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, they're not generally a big play offense. It's just not what they like to do. They like to move the chains, put together long drives, and get that running game going as well. So I do think Washington will hang around. I'll take the Commanders plus the 10.5. I do like that a lot. And I also think it'll be, this number's tough. I do think the under will hit, under 47.5 points. But it could be 28-17. You know what I mean? I could see it being 28-17 will put us outside the number. Excuse me. It could be more like 24-17, 27-17. I think it'll be relatively close, and it's not going to be a crazy high-scoring game. But it's not one of my favorite totals to pick. I really like Washington to cover because, like I said, they're going to get a lot healthier. But the total is right at the number, I think. I think it's going to be right in that range. But I would lean more toward the under. So give me Washington plus the 10.5 and the under 47.5 points. All right, guys, that's going to do it for our picks. If you guys enjoyed the content, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. That is it for all the games. We have daily NBA content. We'll have our Thursday night football video out as well if you guys are watching this video early. Aside from that, it's a lot of fun as always bringing these videos to you. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you guys for the next one. Keep in mind, the Commanders-Chiefs game that we just talked about, we run a live stream for as well on Monday nights. If you guys want to hang out with us on Monday nights, it's always usually a good time. So appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.